Papa John's became my papa. And I really, really got into a very unhealthy lifestyle. My cholesterol was through the roof. I was 38 years old. I was weighing close to 300 pounds. And the doctor's like, you're going to have a heart attack and you're going to die. And I thought to myself, okay. Now understand, I was a Marine. I would run. I was lean and mean. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I'm like, I'm never running again. I'm never running. I'm not lifting weights. I'm done. And that took a toll on me. And then so at the same time, that was kind of going on. My pastor, Steve Reynolds in Washington, D.C., Steve weighed close to almost 400 pounds, right? He was 400 pounds. And he was on multiples medication and all of this stuff. And God did a movement in our church where we launched a sermon series called Bod for God. And this is the crazy thing, right? And what happened was we just decided it was going to be this just for him, for me, we were just going to try to do this together, and he was working through some things personally, and I was like, okay, Pastor, I want to help you get healthy and all this stuff, and so this Washington Post reporter comes up and says, we want to do just this little story, and Steve was like, okay, it's going to be this little story, it's not going to be anything big, and the next day it's on the front page of the Washington Post. Ooh. It says, I think it was like, Pastor leads... What is it?
Anti-fat.
Yeah, anti-fat pastor leaves flock from fridge. That was the title. And it literally went around the world. And next thing I know, my pastor's on Neil Cavuto, he's on Fox News and all this stuff. And next thing we know, we've got people flocking everywhere into our church. And it became this God movement. Anyway, he wrote this book called Bod for God. And Jen and I were a part of that, writing that book with him. And at the same time, I was doing research, in health for myself and working on my doctorate, which was in theology and biology mixed in health and what God says about the word soma and all that stuff. And we took some of that research, put it in Bod for God. But then the second book that came out, we really wrote it for men and for pastors. And it was called Get Off the Couch. And we want to give you a copy of that. It's on Baker now, Baker Publishers. But at the time it was on Regal, so Regal closed down. And this really is just kind of a kickstart. If you're not healthy and you want to get healthy, and trust me, I know plenty of people that are really skinny and they dropped out of a heart attack because they're, I call them skinny fat inside, because there's all this fat in their arteries and they don't even know it. And so this book has really, really changed literally thousands and thousands of lives. So I just want to give you a copy of it, and feel free, read it, reach out, and I can connect you with Steve anytime. And really what happened is God took a health and wellness ministry, and that became the proponent of us reaching literally people of all walks of faith, all walks of life, working through our doors. I would have never thought in a million years in Washington, D.C., I'd have a row of Muslims with Muslim garb listening to the Word of God.
Amen.
Because you know what? Fat is no respecter of person. And you know what I found in my research is that it's very interesting, is that the number one overweight people group in the world are Christians. Ranking number one, guess what? The Baptist. We don't smoke pot, but we do a lot of potluck, you know what I'm saying? and so that kind of led through, and really it just revolutionized my life. And so many, I get all the vegan, I'm vegan now. It's just because of my cholesterol. My liver produces so much cholesterol and I can't eat regular food, so I've got to be really careful because it could be high one day and low. And so, unfortunately I can't enjoy steak like you all. I have to eat my lettuce and all that stuff. Jen, you want to say anything else about the book? Or?
I think you did it.
Oh, okay. So we want to make sure that you get a copy of that for free, and just to help you. All right, let's journey here and keep going, and I'll try to get you out of here by 1:30. It's okay. So just kind of a recap, not necessarily discussion, but just some things to think about. Again, I'm going to send this to you. We've moved from a come and see model to a go and be model. Now we're about go and be. Now it's not just about come and see, come inside our building, come see who we are, look at our brand. It's not about that anymore. Now it's about go and be. It's about living the gospel out. We workshop, study, and play. Some other thoughts. We need to divorce how we do things and marry our why we do things. And what do I mean by that? I'm not talking about doctrine. I'm talking about programs. I'm talking about the things that have been in your church for a long time, and you've been doing them because you've been doing them. I have a church in my area that they still think puppet ministry is cutting edge. I'm like, do you understand the kids are on tablets now? They still use the flannel graph. God bless the flannel graph. I'm like, we moved from flannel graph to tablets, and so, but they don't get it, and they can't divorce, and they don't know why they're doing it. They're just doing it because they've always done it that way. And so you need to ask, why are you doing certain things in your church? Another thought is if you discard technology, it will discard your community. Everybody right now lives on the web. Everybody's looking for hope in their brokenness, and what would it look like if your church could be the answer? What would it look like if people could walk and have a conversation with you about their brokenness? And so think about how you can leverage technology. Another thing that's kind of shifting is community and diversity are in, and the club and perks are out. You ever have that church member say, I've been here 30 years, I have the right to tell you what to do? That's club membership. That doesn't last anymore. That's over. And so community and diversity are in, and what I mean by diversity, I mean ethnicity is, I'm not talking about, marrying somebody's political views, I'm talking about community and having true fellowship community with people and living life with them. Another thought is if you don't make shifts today, your church may not see tomorrow. So when you get this study, I just want you to go through it. I want you to think about it. Just, I'm a type of guy, I eat the meat, spit out the bones. I don't have to agree with everybody, but I do learn from everybody. I learn what to do and what not to do and what never to do. But I'm always learning. Online attendance is the front porch to the back deck. If you can get your church online, get your messages online. I had a guy come to me. He runs cable, like Cat5 cable and stuff, and security cameras. And he says, "Hey, pastor, can I talk to you a minute?" He goes, "I found this guy on YouTube who's not a pastor, but he has over 200 million people he's reaching." I said, "What is he doing?" He says he takes his one message, and he says he has multiple people translate his message in multiple countries. And he goes, "What would it look like, pastor, if people could take your messages every single week that all my friends are listening to, and we can translate it in every single language and put it out on YouTube?" I was like, huh. And then I got stressed out because I was like, wow, that's a lot of work. But I thought, that's it. Notice attendance, but celebrate engagement. Celebrate the people right now who are showing up. Celebrate them. Celebrate their serving. Celebrate their life change. This is so important. What sells now, and I say sells lightly, is people's stories. If you could get one person in your church, it doesn't matter. You don't have to have a mega church. You take your phone, raw. People like raw and authentic. It doesn't have to be polished. And you say, hey, give them a list of questions. What is God doing in your life right now? How has Jesus changed your life? Record that story and put it out. And people will watch it. There's a whole philosophy behind what is called stopping the feed. Now, I know I'm talking to maybe some older folks that don't understand this lingo, but when you're scrolling, the new marketing approach is how do you stop the feed? Once you stop the feed on Instagram, the algorithms of what you like go up, and then you ever notice, all of a sudden you start getting that content because you looked at it once. It's a different approach in economics. It's how the ads are coming to you now. And so what you want to do is you want to celebrate those stories. You want to get those stories out because you never know somebody's story, somebody's testimony, somebody will watch that and they'll think, there's hope for me too.
I don't want to derail you, but I need this information in greater detail on a regular basis. How do I sign up for? I'd like for this to become part of the way that a cohort or whatever you want to call it, but I need help implementing and reminding me of this stuff until I actually start to live it.
Mm-hmm. This would be
something we can do?
This would be a great thing we just hired a new communications person. That person would probably be good. Mm-hmm. But that person would also need to know what's happening in our churches and what our pastors need. But you and I and others could inform.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that is, it is definitely needed. I completely agree with you.
Because I get all excited about, and my head will start nodding, and I'll get back to church, and I'll be overwhelmed by the extreme lack of resources to implement any of it. And what is it gonna look like in my context, and what's my next step? And I'm a procrastinator. I procrastinated even in saying that word. I need that weekly or whatever it looks like, once a month, every other week, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Giving me a little bit more depth. I agree with everything I've seen in theory,
Yeah.
but I need help.
Yep, so the first thing you want to do is look within your church, and you need to identify the Gen Z people. Not millennials, Gen Z.
They're the empty seats.
Okay, so what, do you have anybody that has grandchildren in your church?
I am fortunate to be fairly computer lit, and
Okay.
I don't do TikTok, but I know what you're talking about when you're talking about this stuff.
Right,
I guess I'm talking more, not about, I'm not talking about getting on Facebook or
Yeah.
YouTube or, but how to implement, encouragement, accountability, schedules, regular thought process on this stuff.
so
talk
what
about
we can
doing-
do is, we'll talk to our communications director and just say, okay, how can we get something like that? And then maybe I can just ask around churches who has some Gen Z people
Yep.
that are actually doing it and bring them in the room.
Yeah.
Because
That would be
you
awesome.
know what I do? I just take my phone and I go, do something
Yeah.
with this. Download this, do that. I just don't have the bandwidth for it. I understand it. I mean, I've been on a computer ever since the Commodore 64, since I was in first grade. Okay, so I've been playing Oregon Trail, and learning basic coding for very early on. But we've come such a long way. But just leverage those relationships, and we're going to do whatever we can to help you. We really, really do. The other thing is, I want to give you some things before we get to our exercise, and we're not doing sit-ups. Okay, so. But measure who's being discipled, not who's sitting in the room. Different metric. What would it look like if we actually measured who's being discipled instead of who is just showing up? We'd see a game changer. This other one can go on for a long conversation. Budget your money differently and carefully. And I'll just say this, there's going to come a point in time, those who were born before 1965 understand what tithing and giving is. I get it, it has to be taught in the church, I understand all that. Those born after 1965, that's when the dwindling started. And so what most churches have done is they've only relied on one income stream, tithes and offerings. And what you're going to see is, I guarantee it, if you do a quick search of who's giving what in your church, you'll probably find, maybe, depending on where you're at, context again, you'll probably find that people who are in the boomer category, they're giving the most. Gen Z is probably not giving the most. Millennials are making decisions, maybe, but you've got to train them. And so what is going to happen is that in order for a church to sustain its giving, you're going to have to develop 3 income streams. You're going to have to develop, obviously, the obedience stream that we all know, tithe and offering. You're going to have to develop a nonprofit that's actually in the community where you can get certain grants and stuff that you can't, most churches can't get. And then you want to start a for-profit where you're actually maybe taking your empty buildings and empty rooms and renting them out like an Airbnb for a communal space. That's some of the uprising things.
Wouldn't we get in trouble IRS-wise having a tax-free property being used as an income?
No. As long as you, the only thing the IRS cares about is that they get their money. So for a for-profit,
It becomes taxable.
yeah, for a for-profit, you have to pay your taxes on it. So absolutely.
And legally, if you have a dinner that you put a price on, you have to pay taxes on that money. If you have a bookstore or a clothing store and you have prices on those items,
Yeah.
the IRS wants that money. They want, it's taxable.
You get the theme? They want their money.
It's
So-
taxable income.
Yeah, and there's plenty of stuff, there's plenty of books out there, if you're interested in that, let me know and I'll connect you. But I wanna do an exercise, and this exercise is, did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, something that I found out by accident, that we stumbled into at our church,
Yeah,
is during COVID, people kept giving. And I was like, as a pastor, I was super grateful for that.
amen.
And I've been pastoring for 12 years, but it hit me that we've never actually showed appreciation other than sending out like quarterly statements.
Yes,
And I was really convicted about that as a pastor. And so what we started doing is mailing out gifts. Now, it doesn't matter if somebody gave $1 or $10,000, but we would send them a book or a CD or, you know, a Dunkin' gift card and say, hey, we see you. Thank you for your partnership.
I love that.
And it doubled the amount of people who were giving just from saying thank you to those
Yes.
who were already giving. And I wish I would have figured that out 10 years ago. But, so I think appreciation and recognition is a big way to.
We're gonna, after this exercise, we're gonna be done, we're gonna go through some pitfalls really quick about just some things to keep on your radar, and you guys can go, everybody can go home. But I wanted to just teach you this exercise that I've used in revitalization. You know, when you step into a room, just because it's your first day of revitalizing the church doesn't mean it's somebody else's first day. There have been people that have been there for years. They have the way they like it. And so one of the things I do with people when I step into a team is I want to build buy-in. I want to make sure everybody's voice is heard. And so this exercise that I'm going to show you is very easy to do, and it's going to be something that you can apply in your church. Instead of having a business meeting, have a dream meeting. Call it something different. Now, if people want to know it, you know, put your budget out there, let people know what it is. But I'm talking about dreaming for the future, dreaming for vision. And so this is nothing new that I've created. This is something that I've adopted from the Patterson School and added one, actually, to it. But it's called Right, Wrong, Missing, Confusing, and Stopping. And so what I do is I grab a bunch of people in a room, just like I'm going to do right now. And what I want you to do is I want you to go around on each one, and I want you to write what's going right in your church, what's going wrong in your context, what's missing in your context, what's confusing in your context, and what needs stopping.
Which one did you add?
Stopping.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what I want to do now is just you know, get some stretching in, and then we got 3 other things we're going to land the plane with. But I want you to just go through and tell us, could they use a marker instead of a pen? So we can see it?
I think we have enough, yes.
Yeah. Just go on and just stand up and just pick one, just whatever it is, like what needs stopping. Like, you know, for instance, what's missing? Wow, we have no way to direct people to the bathrooms. Just because you know where the bathrooms are doesn't mean your first-time guests know where the bathrooms are. So we do those things. We do stuff like this. You want to add anything else we can do?
No, I think you can grab a marker and just you yourself just go across and just in your context, just write something down. Try to think of something for every category, okay? There's always something going right. We tend to focus on what the most.
What's wrong?
What's going wrong? Because that's what's stressing
And
us out.
don't put deacons on wrong.
You know what I mean? But
That
there's
would be cool.
They're under missing.
yeah.
Are they still alive? That's the.
I love the confusing category, because Gary's right. I think in 1 month I answered for guests at our church, where are the bathrooms, where are the bathrooms, and I'm like, that's confusing. People don't know where to go. So we got the biggest signs from Hobby Lobby, the biggest letters we could find from Hobby Lobby. Restrooms, right there. Check, that's done. It's no longer confusing, and that's what the purpose of this is. So go ahead, who
So
wants to be the
grab a
first one
marker.
to grab a
Let's go.
marker?
Let's do it.
Come on up, we're gonna give you about 5 to 7 minutes to go ahead and start writing.
Only one person at a time?
Oh, little presence, older believers are missing, men. I have a convent. I was like,
I got it.
got it. People not engaging with discipleship. All right, confusing, is this the longest? Or, no, stop, stop. All right, confusing. Next steps after first attendance. Sounds like assimilation. elders' roles and responsibilities, membership is confusing. Building, layout, parking, clarity parking, dittos. Transitioning, trying to look at the full story in one person's life. Are we an African church, an American church, or a kingdom church? Wow.
That's powerful.
That is very
Yeah.
powerful.
Somebody needs to tweet that.
What is church and why do we do church? That's confusing. And then getting them into the 21st century.
Amen.
Guys, that's a great, those are
Yeah.
some great things to talk about and to bring clarity to. Stop fighting and running. Learn to disagree well. If you figure that out, share that with all of us. For the purpose of learning and uniting in truth. Things that are outdated, filling slots, rigidity about how the space looks, talking about what's missing. We need to stop that. Making consumers instead of disciples. We always did.
That's the way we always did it.
Oh,
Yep,
yes,
yep,
yes. Stop saying that, all right? Yeah, do not call a pastor, rather train up next pastors within the church from disciple-making process.
Love it.
Amen. Holding on to traditions, and then keeping the old-time ways and be open to changes.
Okay.
Wow.
So this exercise right here, does everybody feel like they had a chance to share their voice?
Yeah.
Probably have more, right? Like I could use another 4 pages, right? So this exercise right here is a simple way to bring your church together. Put them up around the church and say, hey, and now you don't have to say this is what we need to make shifts in because they've already said it. Like what's missing or what do we need stopping or confusing? You can start with building buy-in from using the people's voice of what they want to see.
What if what they want to see is what happened 40 years ago?
Right, so that's going to come out in confusing and stopping, because that's where you come in. You say everybody has a voice, and then you anonymously go up there, write. Everybody's writing. I think those types of shifts are what this exercise is basically to do is to get people talking together. If people actually write, like what's going right, that's going to come out. What's actually happening, what's wrong is going to happen. They're going to say, well, we have no young people. We have no young people. And then you get to say, why do you think that is? See, as a pastor, it's amazing when the more questions you ask, the less statements you have to make. You start asking questions. There's a great book out there. I think John Maxwell wrote it. He writes all great books on questions, asking great questions. And I've learned to be a great question asker. Because great questions invoke the conscience, statements invoke the will. And so when you ask questions, people go, huh, yeah, that's why we don't have it. What needs to change?
Do you have an answer to the why there are no young people here? I mean, that is a question for
Because most young
just about
people,
every church. I know the statistical reasons why, and I know what the lacks are. But this is one of those things on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I like reinforcement on how to look at positive things that have worked for other churches, reinforcing that idea so that we keep on doing them and keep trying.
Mhm.
That made any sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Yep. And so I've got tons of exercises, but this is the exercise I used when I first came into the church, where everybody was like, the bank's not going to take it. I said, but they are, because you don't own the building. They are going to take your building. You don't own it. And so I had to go through and try to bring buy-in and give people a voice, because I was in a location where nobody had a voice. The pastor said everything. You did it the way the pastor said it. If it's not the way the pastor said it, you're wrong. And it was that type of mentality. It was very kind of legalistic. Yeah.
Would you say that people walked into that with shared vision, or that the vision was more clear to people as they engaged in this exercise? So people came in with a different vision, and then the vision became clear to everybody as they engaged.
I think we did many of these before things became clear. You're not going to do this once and solve the world's problems or the church problems, but it is going to give them a pattern to say, okay, and maybe you find one thing and you make one shift. You make small nudges, little by little. To turn a church around, I don't know if you've ever been on a ship. It takes a long time to turn a ship around. You can turn a little boat around, you can spin around. You can't do that with a ship. It takes a while. And so I think with this exercise, if you could just incorporate some of this with your people, some of your leaders, maybe some of your top givers, like whatever it is, this could just spark a conversation of something new. That's it. I just wanted to share that with you. And just give you something, food for thought. It's not going to solve all the problems. It's just one of many things. There's a SWOT analysis, you know, you can do. There's so many things out there. But I want to make sure I get you out of here. You guys are supposed to be out of here at 1, right? So
Yeah, let me say one thing.
yeah,
Pastors do not move around to the other churches.
yeah,
Don't seek for the bigger church to serve.
yeah.
Stay where God called you. That's your church.
Amen.
That's your family. Your father don't move around someone else's family. Am I right?
Unless somebody adjusts the
That goes on the top.
Pastor
That's why
is
there's
a
no-
spiritual father to your congregation God put you.
Amen, yeah.
Stay there the rest of your life until you die. That's the one who retired. No retirement in the church. We just just put aside, okay, turn over to other homegrown pastors from your church.
Yes.
That's your vision.
Yes.
That's what I once said, pitfall. So many pastors out of seminary looking for a bigger church, will pay, forget it. You can build your church. God has given you ability.
Yeah.
Yeah, amen.
All right, so last 3 things, and this, I want you to pay attention to these 3 things because they are up and rising. And I've asked Jana to come and speak to this. She's our director of operations, and she really deals with a lot of this stuff firsthand. So the first pitfall I want you to think about is dealing with the growing mental health crisis in our country. And this is huge.
So all 3 of these pitfalls have taken much time, attention, energy, and money just in the last 7 days in our ministry, and I guarantee you're going to be dealing with them. Dealing with a growing mental health crisis, this is real. Stress levels are high, kids and young adults especially. And so the COVID lockdowns have done some significant damage, and it's just coming out. And I think we're going to be dealing with these ramifications for a long time. We just had a teen event, our all-nighter, which was supposed to be on New Year's Eve, and we had to postpone it because of COVID. And within the first 45 minutes, we had 3 panic attacks. We had to talk a young teenager out of the bathroom just to be able to come and integrate with our activities. Kids are reporting a high level of stress. And it's not just the children, it's the adults, and it's also pastors and church leaders. We're dealing with, like I said, panic attacks, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. And so this is something that you are going to have to be willing and ready to step into in the context of the church. I was watching the news yesterday, Fox News, one of the leading stories. Gary had actually texted it to me early in the morning, and I didn't see it, but then I saw it on the news. The CDC has just come out with a report on high school students. All right, 37% are reporting poor mental health. 44% are reporting that they are sad or hopeless. 55%, okay, so we shut everything down and we kept everyone at home, but for a lot of kids and a lot of teenagers, home was not a safe place. 55% are reporting that they sustained emotional abuse during the lockdowns, and 11% physical abuse. And so you've got to have in your arsenal a list of resources that you can provide for families in your church on how they can maneuver these mental health issues. Start talking, find the Christian counselors in your area, and train your volunteers. One of the things that Gary and I are going to be working on vigilantly over the next 3 months is getting our next gen leaders all together in a room and coming up with a plan. How are we going to address this, and how are we going to step into this in a biblical way? So that is one area. I will say that Gary, one of the things that Gary, one of his strengths is really talking to the people in the seats on what are they dealing with it, and then speaking through how he is preaching. Okay, so he's going to be kicking off a sermon series on Easter. Can you just talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm calling the collection, we don't call them series, we just call them collections. And It's going to be on stress and how to move from stress to rest. And I'm going to be walking them through Psalm 23. And verse by verse, just so they can understand that there's hope and point them to the shepherd.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to focus on.
So that's one area, just keep it on your radar. We don't have all the answers, we're stepping into it ourselves, but it's going to be a pitfall, but a potential for you as a church leader. So the second one is going to be understanding safety and security. This is huge, and this is huge for your families, your young families coming out of COVID. It is important. And people are uneasy and on edge. So you need to be prepared to speak into what you are doing to keep their kids safe and secure and to keep them safe and secure at church. And it is just as much about safety as it is security as well. So you're going to be talking to those young families. I feel like I'm having more conversations about our procedures and protocols in our children's and teens department than I ever have. And so really, if you don't have a safety and security team at your church, Sandy and the BCNE does a great job providing resources and webinars and ways that you can get this team up and running. But this is another pitfall, possible potential for you guys. Have a plan moving forward on how you address these things. We had dinner with a couple on Monday night, and they had emailed Gary 2 years ago and asked for a whole list of how we handle kids. And they're just now coming back from COVID, and the dad walked in and was like, ooh, security cameras in every kid's room. Yes. And they left their children. So safety and security is an issue. And the last one, ignoring the next generation. This is a pitfall. If we are not focused and if we do not pour into the next generation, we are going to find ourselves in trouble in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, this generation, like I said before, has been greatly impacted by COVID and the lockdowns. One thing that we want you to go ahead and download, and this is the Global Youth Culture Report. This is the URL to go get it. Download it, read it, start going through it. This is the most comprehensive study on the next generation that I've ever seen. Over 8,000 teens and youth have been surveyed in this study across the globe. And what are we finding? That they are stressed, the mental health issues are through the roof, and really there's not a lot of framework, okay, as far as their religion. Over half of teens globally say they've never read religious scripture on their own. Go ahead and read it, download it, and this is what we are training all of our next gen leaders, and we are coming up with a game plan for how can we change these statistics in our context. And it really is, get them in the Word of God. You know, be ready to address these things that they're dealing with, gender identity issues, all of this. We've got to be able to step into it and have a biblical answer. So go ahead and download that report. We have to be willing to step into these hard conversations, not walk away from them.
Awesome, thank you. So we're coming to a close. I just want to give you some upcoming dates. The next webinar I'm going to do is called Revitalizing Your Summer. And that's going to be on Monday, May 30th at 7 p.m., so you can sign up and look out for that. And then on October 29th, we're going to be doing a one-day revitalization conference that we're going to be focusing on vitality, whether that's church planting, ethnic ministries, or church revitalization in itself, in its entirety. And that's going to be at City United Church in Lunenburg at our church. And so we're really, really excited about that. And so I have one last giveaway, and then I'm going to ask Hal to come on up and share a few lasting closing words and then pray us out. But I wanted to give another giveaway. When I first came to New England, one of the first people that I met that I was very impressed with, I had no idea who the guy was, his name was Gordon McDonald. And I saw this guy, you know, black slacks, tight, you know, blue shirt, like lean, and I was like, who is this dude? He's like, this is a leader right here. I was like, hey, you thought about planting a church? I didn't know who this dude, right? Gordon McDonald sits me down, he's like, look, we had breakfast up in New Hampshire at Friendly's, and he just started pouring into me, and it was one of the first books I read. And this book is powerful. I don't know what revising it's on, but I've got the original copy, and it's all tattered and beat up. But we want to give this away.
See, we just pulled the winner.
Uh-oh. I even get music now. Paul Kim.
Yeah.
Oh! thank you.
So, guys, it's been great. I'm sorry that we've,
Assistant.
yeah, all right.
Hey.
Yeah, continue the before.
Yes, wow.
So it's been great.
Next generation.
I hope that you got some freebies, you got some insight, and we're here to help you as long as you want us to be, and I'm here to help you go further, faster. I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to fight for you, pray for you, do whatever I have to do to help you achieve what God's called you to. So at this time, I'm going to ask Hal to come up and share a few words and close us out in prayer, and I'll be around. I'm going to hang out, so if you have any questions.
Let's thank Gary and Jenna for their help. So you're going to see in the coming year a more robust revitalization offerings, and you'll hear that from Gary. I just want to say personally, I'm very excited about that. I know some of you are like, can you give me the next steps? I need more nuts and bolts, or I need this on this information. You're going to get that coming down the pike, and so I'm super excited about it. The other thing is we have evangelism offerings that are coming out, and Sandy's been organizing all of that. And my own personal plug is I'm doing a talk on understanding your community. So if you're going to revitalize your church, you have to understand where's your community at. What do they value and what do they need? And then how do you respond to that? And so that's actually a 2-part series. That way we don't do it more than an hour and you don't zone out or pretend like you're online and then come back at the end. So I just want to say thank you for being here. If you know other brothers and sisters who could leverage some of this training or upcoming trainings, let them know. Don't wait on the BC&E. We're a family together, trying to advance the gospel here in New England. And one of the things we often say is, New Englanders for New England.
Yeah.
So let it be that way, as we have the admonition of raising up our own leaders here to reach people.
Before you close in prayer, can I ask a question?
You should, yes.
This is overall, one-day conference is helpful to reflect, to think. My question is, how can you multiply for this revitalization movement within New England? How can you revitalize? Because conference does not revitalize any churches. Unless the church get involved or network of churches work together to an action.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we have how many conferences we had, that does not have any church revitalized. The question that I have, how many churches right now, amount to about 388 churches or so, are revitalizing process right now? How many?
Oh, how many of the 388 are in revitalization? Is that what you?
388 revitalized?
No, so you're saying out of that, I'm trying to understand the question. Out of the 388, you want to know how many of them need to be revitalized right now?
No, right now, how many?
How many are an intentional strategy
How many
to
churches
revitalize
are
their church?
in the
In the
process.
process.
I know you're working with some.
Yeah, so I can only handle, so no matter what coaching group, they say, Gary, you can only handle 3. So right now I'm dealing with how many, Jenna? 7. Right, I'm dealing with 7 churches where I'm working with them. There are other organizations in New England that are working. When you're asking specifically for the BC&E, obviously the goal is to reproduce myself. So I'm going to develop a training, a training center where I can take people that have a heart for revitalization. Maybe they're getting their degree in it. They have a heart to help other pastors, and I'm going to release them and put them in certain areas so they can help other people. So if I can handle 7, most people can't. Most people can handle 3, but I think to myself, what would it look like if you have pockets of people everywhere that can help within that context? But that's coming.
One of the conversations we've had is about
Yeah.
building a team all throughout New England as a resource, but also fleshing that out through pastor cohorts. Because we have to help each other. We have to have self-contained, self-resourcing teams. A decentralized strategy that, again, puts it right back into the local church as brothers lead brothers in the revitalization of that church.
And what's great is like we've got people here, like I think of Don at Legacy Church. I mean, he's doing a great job, And not only that, but he has a skill set that he can speak into churches of his size, and he helps other pastors, and he helps lead. I mean, if you're not a member of it, give them the Facebook, is it Revitalize New England?
Yeah, Revitalize New England.
Yeah, so go if you're on Facebook and you do that thing, there's a lot of different people. When did we start? That was like during COVID, right?
That was right before COVID.
Right before COVID. And so we got a pretty decent following, and people post articles and stuff in there, but everybody, there's this community where people are talking about it. But this is gonna take an all-in effort. Where I'm at now with me is, you can imagine, I literally get phone calls like crazy, and everybody has the same question: can you help me? And I'm like, bro, I'm not Jesus. Like, I'm trying to help myself some days, you know? But I've got to duplicate myself. And the only way I can do that is when it's full focus, when I'm focused on it 100%, where I can get a group of people like you all. I view this as the beginning of something. Maybe something in your heart saying, you know what? I think I can learn this stuff and I can duplicate myself. And I'm thinking to myself, as a way of discipling and revitalization, all of a sudden all these people go out, and then hopefully next time we do this, we'll see even more people in the room. But it's a process.
Yeah.
One thing the BC, the SBC did that was good in the NAM church planning is they had those cohorts. And I saw the effect of the cohorts and the interactions, the encouraging, the counseling, that we didn't have in the established churches. And I think that led to some of this decline that we're seeing, is that lack. There's a need for that, and that's really what I might not kill, but I would think about killing to get into a cohort where that was the focus that built that kind of a community.
Well,
I'm not gonna kill anyone.
Let's say Gary's been talking about the future. That is our future. And there's a macro shift taking place even here, where you had people on staff who were thinking that they're the experts in these areas, and Gary is an expert, but moving from expertise to facilitating, right? So that's the shift. We don't want everything to fall on Gary. I wouldn't want everything to fall on me. We have capable leaders here, and we have an extensive network. How do we leverage the best of who we are so that everyone is engaging? We're actually just beginning to do some of those things. We just started a group out on the Cape. It's with a group of pastors there. And these are groups, these guys said, the last time we got together was like 8 months ago. But after we came together and said, what if it looked like we were praying for each other, praying for the community, finding ways to encourage each other and help each other, and then collaborate, right, for the proximity where God's put us to see every man, woman, and child come to know Jesus. What would we have to do in our specific context? That's different than what has been done before. Mm-hmm. And then that's, again, the name of BC&E has gone from convention to churches. So our job is to facilitate that, encourage pastors to keep getting together, undergirding what's really important and putting those things out. So we are committed to that. Yeah. It's probably going to take some time, but we think that is the future. And that goes back to organic and everything else that Gary was talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are networks here in New England, like I know Gary and Hal they're trying to get, but there's Overseed and there's also Small Town Summits, which are focused on revitalization and church